Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Talking Wednesday podcast. I've been saying it for a very, very long time that we will do these different kind of episodes where it's not just me and Jake being idiots and then the small boy that is Jack also being an idiot involved. I said we would do something with a bit more depth, a little bit more variety. So I am very, very pleased today to welcome two members of the Sheffield Wednesday Women's Supporters Group, and that is Em and Bethany. Thank you so much for joining me today on Talking Wednesday, both of you. I just want to start sort of like with yourselves rather than knowing who to go first. If one of you wants to sort of introduce yourself and give me an overview of what you do, really.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I'm Em. Thank you so much for having us. You were actually the first podcast I ever listened to, so it feels like I've come full circle. So that's nice.
Oh, that's nice.
First Wednesday podcast, anyway. Yeah, so we started the Women's Supporters Group just over a year ago now, sort of in the middle of last season. Last season now. And yeah, it's just grown exponentially, really. I think we've got nearly 400 members now. We try to host kind of semi-regular meetups when people are free. We've launched like an away day network as well for fans who go to away games, but they might be put off having to go on their own. So like we've facilitated meetups and stuff at each away game now, which is working really well. We've got a very lively WhatsApp chat, which, gives us a nice sense of community. And yeah, just try and do events as and when, do a bit of fundraising as well. Yeah, it's all good fun.
Nice one. Thank you. And Bethany, so obviously I've just introduced you as your name there, but if you want to take over from that.
Yeah, I came on board probably a month after the Women's Supporters Group started to kind of help Em and Lauren out with admin, and they've not managed to get rid of me yet. It's been a roller coaster. It's been fab. We just kind of enjoyed a little bit of a lull over the past couple of months of no football to catch up and rest a bit and get ready to go again next season.
No, fantastic. I mean, I've often said that like I'm a bit of a recluse and I seem like a bit of an idiot sometimes about not paying attention, but I've actually seen quite a lot of what you guys have been doing as well. So I was really interested to speak to you, especially with something I'm quite passionate about. I'm not somebody to shout about a lot of things, but what you guys do in terms of actually trying to, would you say, give a safe space for not just women, but women specific, sort of predominantly to have a space in the Wednesday fan base to talk? And I think that's something that I really, really, admire, really. And is that where it kind of came from, you think?
Yeah, that's exactly it, I think. I know me and Lauren, we both kind of shared the experience of being online and having all sorts of silly comments directed at us, and then it happened once in real life as well when we were both there, and we were like, we need to do something about that. We just want like a group that we can be with and not be worried about people what they're gonna say, what they're gonna do. So yeah, we just set about making it started off as like quite a small WhatsApp group, and it's just grown and grown. And yeah, it's not just for women, it's for anyone who kind of shares our vision of, a more inclusive club, really. We've got loads of men in our group who we absolutely adore, and we couldn't do it without them. And it's just great to know that there are allies out there.
So that's the kind of first point I actually wanted to touch on, actually, because the thing I see a lot, and I probably have been partisan to it in certain times. When you see, we've got a lot of supporters groups. Every club seems to have quite a lot of supporters groups, which personally I see as a positive thing, but I do see it a lot when people say sort of like, well, I'm just a normal, you've seen this a lot. I know you've seen this a lot. I'm just a normal fan. Why don't I have my own group with this sort of access, this sort of thing and things like that? And I'm just kind of like, I get what you're saying, right? But you're also doing it in the complete wrong way, because from what I understand about your group, it's not exclusively women, is it? It's meant to be an open group, because it says your Twitter bio literally says a network of 350 plus owls open to everyone. So, Bethany, if I go to you on that, do you sort of do you see the comments sort of like that, and how different do you try and make your supporters group in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we appear on certain forums, it's like bingo. It's like, why isn't there a men's group? Why isn't there this? Why isn't there that? Like, or sometimes I'm a woman, I don't feel the need for this, which is calm. It's totally fine. Like, we're here if you want us, kind of thing. I think the amount of people we've been able to help and personally benefiting from it as a trio, as well as kind of being able to make connections between other people. That's what we're there for. It's not to kind of tread on anyone's toes or exclude anyone. It's to bring people together, which I think can be taken the wrong way. See Women's Supporters Group, it on the label, it can possibly come across as slightly exclusionary, but it's literally the opposite. We're here if you want us, and it's a great time if you'd like to join us.
No, yeah, that's the way I've always seen it with yourselves, and because I've seen enough groups in the past, it sometimes does seem to be that sort of, oh well, we've got access sort of thing, you know, and that's the thing. Whereas, like for me, where I sort of saw you guys come from really was the place of more of trying to. I think we're all kind of like interested in building community and things like that. So apart from sort of, you know, a space for just everybody to sort of be. What would you say sort of like you've been involved with so far in terms of the supporters group, and what kind of things have you been proud of, sort of milestones along the way, Em?
I've got a whole document somewhere with a big list of like achieved, just so I could like repeat them on things like this, but obviously I don't have it open right now. But a lot of the charity stuff we've done has absolutely blown my mind. I think Bethany worked out the total the other day that we'd raised over the last season, and it was close to £32,000, wasn't it?
I think it was 50 quid off. I think we were £31,950. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just like for, you know, small local charities to, you know, slightly bigger charities. I remember when we started trying to fundraise and we were worried we wouldn't even get £1,000, but people have been so generous. So that's really sort of blown us away.
Especially because you are obviously free as well, so that's all come from fundraising. It's not like you have a membership or things like your membership's free, isn't it? So
yeah, completely free. We give out free badges whenever we see people. We've always got a bit of a stock. I think we'll probably try to go down the route of getting sponsorship at some point, just to help us out as we get bigger and bigger. And we've been lucky to get a bit of funding from the Football Supporters Association, their Fans for Diversity scheme. So yeah, we've really benefited from stuff like that.
No, that's a thing that I mean, I kind of want to ask, really. You know, when you think of where you want to go with it, and you've had these achievements, and that's fantastic what you've raised so far. When you bring, obviously, you are scaling at the minute. You are a scaling organization, so I guess it's a question, and I'm sure you've thought about this as well. How do you keep your core sort of structure, values, and community as you get bigger and bigger and bigger? Because what you tend to find in certain groups, for example, and I won't really say in this fan base I've seen it much, but I definitely have seen it in certain other fan bases with groups, they kind of use it as a platform, and then some people branch off and build an entire career out of it, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So how do you know, they'll do what we do. They'll start podcasts. They'll start all of this. They'll cash in on it. So how do you keep the focus of what you want to do whilst you're growing? And there will be opportunities like that.
Bethany, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think we Emma and Lauren set this up, and then I piggybacked along off some kind of really strong core values for the group of kind of looking after community, engaging with people, empowering people. And I think for as long as we're kind of working off those, which is our intention forever, we'll be okay. Really, I think it has been exponential, and it's gone beyond where I thought we'd be in a year's time, this time last year. It has been crazy, but we're still kind of motivated to use that for good. And kind of, I think from cultivating this really kind of fairly tight, warm community, the best bit about it is sharing that, and whether that's with charities or kind of raising awareness for things. I think as long as we're kind of committed to those values and focused on kind of extending this love and extending this community, we'll be fine. It's not something I particularly worry about. We're not for profit. We're looking after charities before we kind of look after ourselves sometimes, and that's how we want it to be. It's totally fine. It's not on my concerns yet.
Well, that's the reason I raised it that way is because I'm thinking of basically anything that anybody could throw at you in any sort of comment section, because this is what you say with these. So you've handled that one very, very well. But in terms of the charities you've worked with, then what specific charities have you guys worked with so far? I could take it there's quite a few, but any that you sort of, you've been working with so far that have been successful, because we've heard you've raised quite a lot.
Yeah, so our last season we partnered with a local Sheffield-based charity called Mums in Need, and they help women who have come out of coercive, controlling relationships and help them kind of, rebuild their lives, basically. They give them all kinds of support. So we've raised a fair bit for them, and they've come and done talks for us. Their resources have actually been really useful. So I hope it's been a kind of mutually beneficial relationship there. And then I think the big one was we decided to launch a fundraiser, or one of our members decided to launch a fundraiser for the Bradley Lowry Foundation after everything kicked off. I won't go into that in too much detail. But that was a kind of, we wanted to just show our support, really. It felt like the very least we could do. I think the initial target for that fundraiser was like £5,000, and I was like, oh, that's a bit ambitious. And then we absolutely smashed it. So when we say we've raised 32,000 this year, the vast majority of that has come from that fundraiser, which went a little bit viral. And yeah, it just felt incredible. And we've met some of the staff at the Bradley Lowry Foundation now. We met them at the Sunderland away leg, so that was great. And yeah, they're just lovely, lovely people, and we're glad to have helped.
I saw that. That honestly, that was, because that, let's be honest, we don't want to dwell on the negative there. We will fully focus on the positive. But to see the response and the way that went, that's what's being Wednesday's all about, because we all sort of do the We're All Wednesday thing. And you do see it at times of like, there's a few that let you down. And the response you did there, it was amazing. But obviously that came from wanting, so you've got figureheads that speak sort of on behalf of the group. That's how your structure works, right? But your things like that come from your members within that. So how does that sort of really work from the inside, so to speak?
So, well, for a long time, there was just me, Lauren, and Bethany. Sorry, Bethany, I've jumped in. This is definitely your turn to answer.
No, go for it.
It was just us trying to do absolutely everything. And we're lucky that we've got this really good relationship within our big WhatsApp chat. There's over 100 people in that chat, but we all talk constantly, really. I'm sure it gets quite annoying for the people who don't want to engage quite as much. We're probably muted on lots of phones. But we've got that relationship, and I feel like our members are empowered to, hey, I've got this idea. Can we get the group support behind this? And, we're yes. We'll share fundraisers for people. We shared that fundraiser, obviously. And that relationship has been so important. We've recently started a working group. So that's like a level above the main WhatsApp chat where people can actually get a bit more involved in the day-to-day stuff of what we do, because otherwise it's getting too much for me, Lauren and Bethany. So yeah, that's been a good step that we've kind of started experimenting with recently.
How would that look from the outside then? You say day-to-day stuff, you've got day-to-day stuff. How does that look for those people that sort of want to get involved on that level, or, maybe just join and then think, one day I might get a bit more heavily involved? How does that sort of entail?
I'll let you go, Bethany.
I would say, yeah, it's completely voluntary. I think we have we've struggled sometimes with asking for help, and we would never say, give us these many hours of your week and you can help us and you get this access to this working group. It's never like that. It's what people want to do for us, because it's what we're all, me, Emma and Lauren, are volunteers. Like, we put in what we can, and we can only expect that of other people as well. I think we've also had a really nice experience with our away day network, which is basically self-sustaining. We've had 3 members volunteer to run that, and it just sustains itself. It's a lovely little community within these WhatsApp communities that you can have now, apparently, that's kind of linked to it, and that sustains itself. They kind of link up together for, we could go to this cafe, we could go to this pub, we should go here after, who's staying in what hotel. Like, it's for as much involvement as us 3 have had, and kind of so much heavy lifting we've done. There's so many tears and sleepless nights and long days. I think seeing that as well kind of self-sustain and just kind of be a beautiful community on its own without us having to do much at all, apart from occasionally turn up and selfishly enjoy the fun. It's been amazing.
So is that where so that's where the extra help's needed, sort of thing? Because I assume when you talk about the day-to-days, it's the organisation. If we look a little bit more into actually your away day network then, so how did that come about, and what have you sort of built with it and where you're looking to take that?
Yeah, it came up at, I think, the first consultation we did last summer at Hillsborough, we had a little suggestion box, or people could put their hands up, and I think a couple of people said like, we feel safe at Hillsborough. Hillsborough's familiar. We have a season ticket. We come every week and sit with the same people. We know their sound. I feel safe because this is my routine. But going to away days, especially when you're probably jumping in between leagues quite a lot, and they don't feel familiar. And obviously the away day culture of boozing and being rowdy. A lot of people kind of identified that as something that they wanted us to help with, and we were kind of butting heads for a while. Like, could we look into seating together or these things? And something that we could control where the logistics didn't get out of hand was creating a smaller network of people who were regularly away day travellers or kind of wanted to dip their toe into that side of supporting the club. So yeah, we again asked for some help, asked for volunteers. We had 3 brilliant members come forward and create this kind of smaller community, and their work on it is amazing. They'll literally look up the best cafes. They'll be looking in the fan zone at what food's on. They'll be, let's go here for a drink before, let's do this after, let's get this train. Like, it's just brilliant. I got to experience it a couple of times this season and kind of reap the rewards, and it was such a good day out, and I'm really happy we've been able to kind of facilitate that, even if we didn't create it or have much say in kind of how it runs. It's fantastic.
So are the club helpful with that, the club themselves, or do you guys do that based off your members? Because obviously the question that will get asked is there's away day points, there's allocations, there's things like that. You know how hard a Wednesday ticket is to get, sort of thing. Is the club helpful in that regard, or is it through your members and doing it that way? How does that work?
The away day network is kind of all us, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people now who've gone home and away for years and kind of now have this little community for them to be like, oh, let's buy, I know away days don't always work like that, but let's buy seats here or do this, or that's been a nice thing to kind of keep on its own. And again, I feel like I keep repeating myself, but self-sustaining, and we kind of just pushed the boat out into the water and it happened. Well,
that's the thing that's really interesting about it, because a lot of people, obviously, you think, oh, there's allocations and things like that, but you're doing it within your group, and that's what is admirable about that. In my eyes, because you've got members that want to take it on and make it a better space for other people, which is why, you know, when sometimes people have a little bit of a pop at certain things, and we've all seen it, I'm sort of like, that's why I wanted to ask you these questions about how you actually run it, because everybody's got a front face. You know, you have your marketing, you have the way you pitch things, you have the way you entice people in there. But some people just make general assumptions about things. And for me, I did research on yourselves, but I purposely didn't dig too deep because I wanted to see what I saw at a surface level, and then what you go behind that, and finding out things like that is entirely throughout your members and doing that themselves is great. Because even if the club, to be honest, I personally believe the club should be supporting, you know, organisations that are going out of the way for certain things like that. But even if anybody was to ever say, oh, well, the club are giving these tickets away and we can't get tickets, it's actually your members doing it. So I went around the houses a little bit there, but yeah, it's really nice to hear that, actually. But in terms of the club then, so, and this feel free to not say anything that you can't say, or if you do, don't worry, it won't go in. Do you have what's your connection level with the club like? Because I've seen you've been involved, I've seen pictures of yourselves on the pitch at Hillsborough, you know, with previous managers and players and things like that. So what's that access level like, and what sort of relationship is it with the club in general? Because we know it's not always been straightforward in certain groups with the club itself, but you guys seem to do have access in a certain regard.
Yeah, I think our relationship with the club is good and historically has been really good. We've got a couple of members of staff who I won't name who've been absolutely brilliant with us consistently. They'll go out of their way to help us, even when it's probably not their job, but they do it anyway. And couldn't thank them enough. What's the EDI? What does that stand for? Equality, diversity and inclusion. There we go. Tracy, who kind of had that role at the club last year, was fantastic. And that has gone to someone else now who we've had a meeting with, and that seems to be, you know, we're starting to build a really good relationship there. So yeah, everything I think pretty much everything we've asked from the club, we've been, allowed to do. I think they see the value in what we do. And as well as the club, the community program have been brilliant as well. They're not, they're a separate organisation in their own right. But they've been really helpful. They've put on events for us. They've organised catering. They've really, I think, equally with the club, if not more. We really need to shout out to the community program for, doing lots.
Because obviously that's the community program sort of, there's probably some question in sort of like, okay, so there's these different supporters groups and then there's the Sheffield Wednesday supporters group, the women's supporters group, there's Armed Force. I'm going to not name them all because I won't name them all. And then somebody be like, why have you not named my supporters group? But in terms of, do they all partner with the community program then, and the program sort of works with you guys individually?
Yeah, I think most, I can't think of any group who would approach them and they'd say no. I think depending on what you're asking for, there'll be something of value that they can kind of collaborate with a supporters group on. I know they've done lots with the Armed Forces. They've done lots with Rainbow Owls as well. And the same with us, they can see a need. We serve a community and they also serve the wider community. So it makes sense for us all to collaborate, work together on stuff. And yeah, it's just, we're so lucky to have something like the community program. I couldn't sing their praises enough, really.
Yeah. And I want to stress again, anyone can get involved and have these connections. That's the whole point of all of this. So we've spoken about your core philosophies and sort of what you've wanted to set out to achieve as a whole, but in terms of actual plans and things you do in the near future, what have you got coming up?
Yeah, we've kind of been in this little lull of resting and recuperating and recharging to go again. But in the near future, we'll be at Owls in the Park. So please come and see me at the stand and bring dogs and play our games or whatever we decide to have on the stall, to be confirmed. Shortly after, we'll do another members consultation at Hillsborough, hopefully. So I think, as the last times it worked so well, I think we'll be informed by that as to what our next season looks like. We've obviously kind of got ideas and we'll be kind of informed by the core values as we go forward. But the most important thing is kind of serving our community. So we'll be really looking forward to getting together again and hearing from people on what they want from us.
Yeah, so Em, you mentioned something along the lines of visibility reporting as well that you guys are key to sort of point out.
Yeah, we're really keen on making sure people know how to report instance of, sexism, misogyny, but also, racism, which unfortunately we all know is a problem at our club now. We hope that by empowering people to use the reporting number, reporting to stewards properly, we can help crack down on that stuff when it does happen and hopefully spread the message that it's absolutely not tolerated at Hillsborough. We also do the same for all the away stadiums as well. We make sure we've got the right information that we can share on social media beforehand, get people to save it in their phones, and then if something does happen, it's much easier for clubs to kind of sort that out on the day rather than waiting for reports to come in after, because that, it is difficult to work out who said what and, track everyone down. So yeah, we're big advocates of reporting on the spot when you see anything that we don't need at football.
Amazing. What I will do as well, for anybody that wants to see all that information, you guys can send it me and I will put it in the description below of this podcast and make sure it's out on audio feeds as well, so people can just have it saved somewhere if they see anything. Because this last year, I've said it a few times, it's been worrying to see how things are getting worse, and I feel like I'm getting older, like an old man waving at a cloud, when it's actually some younger people as well. It's not a lot, but like it's creeping into younger people that are younger than me, and I'm like, hang on, we don't need another go round on this abuse and the racism, and we don't need to go through another generation. It was dying out. We don't need to bring it back. So yeah, I will leave all of that below. But no worries. I want to not make this podcast all about one thing, because the one thing that is important is the fact that we're all Wednesday fans as well. We've mentioned that. So I want to talk Sheffield Wednesday with you for a little while, if that's all right. So really important, really actually insightful for me there, because I didn't know everything about yourselves and what you do in the first half of this podcast. But for the next half, I'd like to talk about what we'd have probably been a lot more sad about if the few weeks ago the season hadn't ended like it did. Sheffield Wednesday and sort of our history with it. So I usually do this at the start of a podcast, but Bethany, I'll start with you. How did you get into Sheffield Wednesday? So where does your Sheffield Wednesday story begin?
I'm actually from Hillsborough. I'm from Essex. I grew up just off Walkley Lane. And I'm a third generation Wednesdayite. My dad had a season ticket. My granddad had a season ticket. But I wasn't particularly a huge football fan for a large part of my life, even though I always knew I was a Wednesday fan. So it was kind of COVID lockdown when there was nothing much to do apart from watch sports when they eventually came back. And then obviously kind of being released into the world during the European Championships and that becoming like a large part of my social life, and it just kind of lingered really. I live in Manchester now, so I don't get to Hillsborough every week. But it's become a massive part of my life kind of since I started re-engaging with sports when there was nothing else to do. So yeah, I've always known I was a Wednesdayite, but it wasn't at the forefront of my life till quite recently. But it's been great, mostly.
That's key as well, because what you've ended up getting involved with, yours kind of built out, your passion for football sort of re-emerged from the social element of it. So the fact that you can actually, more people can get these spaces and have people they can be social with, that just promotes more opportunities like that. But what a time as a Wednesday fan, by the way, a relegation season to reignite your
It's funny because my dad fell out with Wednesday, which was why they were never kind of part of my childhood for very long, or kind of part of my growing up. My dad fell out with us after relegations and us not being the big club we should be. So I probably quite disappointed that it took a relegation for me to get into them, but then I love an underdog, I guess.
Well, you've got a classic shirt behind you as well, just from that.
Yeah, these are gifts. Oh, sorry, that's my really dirty bedroom, but yeah, they are nice matching pair from my boyfriend who works in football shirt archiving. So been quite lucky. That's
not a bad partner to have connections wise.
All right,
is it?
Yeah, it'll do.
That's all right. But yeah, so yourself, your history with Wednesday, how did you get into our football club?
Kind of the opposite to Bethany in lots of ways. I am from Sheffield. I grew up in Crooks, but my mum and dad weren't really that bothered about football. I didn't grow up with a football team. My granddad was a Man U fan, but I always thought he was a bit of a Glory supporter, so I knew that wasn't cool. I knew I couldn't support Man U in the early noughties. And so I just knew I had to pick one of the local teams. And I remember distinctly hearing in class one day when I was probably in like year 3, that Wednesday had been relegated. And I was like, oh, they need my support. They need my support more than the other team. So yeah, as Bethany, love an underdog. I went for Wednesday because I thought they needed a bit of love. And it turns out I was right. So yeah.
What year? I'm not doing. What year was that? Because I feel like we might have been around the same season now. Now you've said the relegation thing.
So I think the first season I went to Watchers was like 2003, 2004. Because that was our first season in what is now League One.
Yeah.
After
that was my first game, 3-0 Hartlepool away loss. Hartlepool at home loss. Great season.
I feel like I make this mistake too often. It was Colchester, Hartlepool were the team we played in the playoff final. I was young at the time, all right, but for whatever reason, I always make that mistake. It was Colchester, not Hartlepool.
I think mine was like Stockport or Swindon or something.
I think that's the season my dad really gave up.
I tell you what, my uncle did that year. He got me, and I wish I wasn't an ungrateful little what I was back then, right? Because he got me like all the players. Wednesday players used to actually have proper football cards, even back in like League One days. Oh, yeah. So he got me the full set of the team and framed them. And I think it broke, and I've got them somewhere. But like he did this amazing frame, and now I'd be like, where is that? You've got what? Sorry.
I might have some handy. I do.
You've got some of the ones from that time?
No, I've got these little trading, like these, like the little.
Yeah, they were like, they're like that. But they were sort of like, I don't know if the term full art means anything to you, but like full body shots of the players. Like you'd have.
I know which you mean. These are.
Jermaine Johnson running and stuff like that. They had that sort of thing. Yeah, them ones. I had the set of those.
These are from the shop that my boyfriend works in. They were putting these all up on the wall, and he nicked me all the Wednesday ones. So I've got loads lying around. If anyone's got any players they need,
I might need to make a new connection here. This is archive. I've got like programs are my because my uncle's a massive. He was a program collector, so he had everything from Wednesday for ages. So I've got stuff from like the 1800s, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
But yeah, that sort of thing. But yeah, so let's go along those sort of lines. So favorite ever players then. So we've got what was your era? Sorry, Bethany, of when you were did you have anything when you were little with Wednesday sort of thing, or was it
Not
all sort of?
particularly. No, I think I maybe went as a kid and had very vague memories of it, and then grew up a bit. If I had to go for my favourite ever, the only player that lingers in my mind is Atinuihu. He just really touched my soul, and I don't know why. But I've got a thing about big strikers, maybe. I don't know.
It deeply upset me to find out he doesn't like being called Big Dave. I was like, come on.
He's the original Big Dave as well.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Atinuihu. I've literally gone on a podcast to talk for an hour about Atinuihu, and it was great. I've invested a lot of my energy in him for someone who wasn't always that good, but I don't know.
His heart was always in it though, and that's the point.
You don't know a cult hero till they're gone. So yeah, I'm going
actually.
with that.
I will counter that. We started this podcast in that season, and I was one of the vocal people that would get quite a bit of abuse online for it, but I rated Atinuihu because he came on and he did a job.
Great minds. Exactly.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
Like, he was a player that did a job, and we could have, if we'd have gone down to League One that first season and had Atinuihu up front, he would have scored a hatful in League One. Just saying.
Big time, yeah.
But yeah, and what about your favourite ever players, if you were to, is it an old one or a newer one?
My first ever favourite player, I used to sit in like right at the bottom of the left-hand side of the cot. I mean, I still kind of sit near there when I go, but so like the player that was opposite me was Derek Geary.
We were literally probably around the same block. That's really weird.
Could well have been. But yeah, no, Derek Geary. I just decided he was my favourite one because he was the one I could see. So I just like built this, like I was 7 or 8 and I was just like, he's the one for me. And then of course he went to Sheffield United, didn't he? So that was my first experience of heartbreak. And I feel like after that, I stopped myself falling in love with a player for a long time. Recently rekindled with a Mr. Will Vaulks, but
not a goalkeeper by any chance? No.
Oh well, yeah, okay. We know how I feel about
goalkeepers. I was going to say like every goalkeeper should be on M Watch, basically, from what I've seen. Whenever
I think the women's supporters group in general is very pro goalkeepers.
Yeah,
fair enough. What is it about goalkeepers?
I wish I could tell you.
Absolutely insane. They're all just like weird, and I love it. Like I just really respect it. Like I'd never do that. I'd never stick myself in a position where I could be hit by a ball at however many miles an hour. But you know, they love it.
Actively throwing yourself towards it as well, which is it does take a certain type of person that. But no, have you got a current favourite player, Bethany?
Current? Ooh. We are also basically a functioning Will Vaulks fan club.
So you're gutted at the minute that it looks like he's on the way to Oxford then?
Very. We're going to probably have to go into a period of mourning if that happens.
He does seem to have a good personality, to be fair, Will. But he reminds me, this is probably quite mean, but he reminds me of that guy in the classroom who's always up to something and can never concentrate. I don't know if that's those vibes.
Speaking of people who always look like they're on speaking of people who always know. Look. Oh my God, what has got into me? I'm so sorry. Speaking of people who look like they're up to something, and also cult heroes that we won't appreciate till they're gone, I love Callum Patterson. I love a bit of a nutter, like Emma said. He is the outfield goalkeeper.
Yeah.
He's got such a calm. He's weird because he's got such a calm head on his shoulders, but he's also a nutcase on the pitch. And that's the thing that you like. You hear him talk, and you see he holds himself really well, but he does what you should do. It's all on the pitch is where the crazy side of it comes out. But yeah, no, he's fantastic. So how have you felt over the last season, Em, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan? We'll go recent. The last season been a bit of a roller coaster.
It was awful. Like, I think I hated every single minute of it. Like, even when it was good, like, there were other reasons to be annoyed. It was just dire. No, obviously, I'm happy we stayed up, and it was impressive, and there were lots of highlights. But in general, I was just, I've blanked out the first half. don't recognise that as a thing that happened. I just refuse. And then
Best.
Yeah, the drama of the end was quite something. But there were lots of really good. We had a table at the Evening with Barry Bannon event. Again, that wasn't something we got given. That was something our members decided to do, and they all paid for their tickets. But that was a real highlight, I'd say. Like that sense of all the players, the community, like when things were really on the up. That was a really special moment, I think. So if I had to pick a highlight, that felt great.
No, that's it's good to be able to pick out the positives of it. And I guess the good thing about being involved with something is you get that, because I know my life, for example, is better when I've got other stuff going on. My Sheffield Wednesday life's a lot better if it's not going well, because otherwise you end up fully relying on that. But when you build more of a thing around it, and you've got other things, like you've got your supporters group, the football doesn't become absolutely everything all the time, because you get nicer memories can come out of it, even if the football is what the football was under Xisco Muniz, which we'll never speak of again. How have you felt this past season, Bethany?
I think I've just been tense the entire time. I don't think I've relaxed since the first weekend in August up until like the end of May, to be honest. I just have felt tense. It's never felt easy. I said a couple of times that when or if we get out of the relegation zone, I think I'm just going to afford myself a little cry from the relief. And I don't think I relaxed until the final whistle at Sunderland. I remember being stood there with Emma at 80 minutes, 2-0 up, being like, I can't relax. It's not over. So now I feel great. But for a long time, I think it's just been very tense. I think the off the pitch stuff that we do has got me through it totally. But hopefully less stress headaches next season.
Does that ever make it worse? For either of you, does it ever make it worse being heavily involved with stuff outside of it? If we look at the other side of it, does it ever... Because you can't... I know what it's like with a podcast. I can't... there was parts of this season where I said it and I became a miserable git on the actual podcaster, because I was like, I can't get away from this. And you guys are in the same boat. You've got a community there, but you can't get away from it when you're so heavily involved with things that relate to the...
Yeah, I think it's a bit like you don't want to see how the sausage is made sometimes. There are certain insights that, I could probably do without. Things we found, I don't know, I don't want to say too much.
That's cool.
But there are certain things that have been really difficult, and it feels like a lot of the time we've got an obligation to do what we do. It started off as this fun community thing for everyone, but at times it gets quite serious. People come to us with personal problems and, safety issues, and we're responsible for reporting certain things to the club a lot of the time as well. So it's not just a case of, I'm done with Wednesday, I want to ignore them for a few months, because if we do that, I'd really feel like we were letting people down. It does make it difficult, but I also think we're quite privileged to be able to do that and do some of the things we do for people. So it balances out.
Yeah, it's all about finding that sort of balance with it, because you don't get one without the other, unfortunately, in football, which is that side of it. So if we're looking forward, let's look forward, shall we? This summer we've got coming up. We've got a new season coming up. We've obviously got an entire new coaching staff in there. We've got a new way. We've got a new play style. We seem to have a new philosophy at Sheffield Wednesday, basically. So how are you feeling in terms of the footballing side of going ahead in the summer? What do you think we need? What do you think will happen going forward, or what do you want to happen? There's a lot of questions in there. So basically, take it whatever way you want. I'll start with you, Em.
I just want Chris Powell to re-sign. I honestly think that'll be the make or break this season. I keep saying it. I won't stop banging the drum. He had such an important dynamic.
It's going to happen, surely. I think everybody was waiting for the manager to sign on, and it seems that way. It's like Windass is out with Bannon, and I think if that's happened, I think it will be a domino effect. The dominoes just aren't falling as quickly as I'd like, to be honest, but that's because people are on holiday. But yeah, you Chris Powell stands then, are we?
Hardcore.
Big time.
Yeah, so what about you then, Bethany? What do you think we need? Let's talk about play. I'll tell you what, let's ask a specific question in terms of the pitch. what area on the pitch do you think we need to capitalise on most? I'm putting you on the spot now because I should say I've not prepared either of them for any of this part, by the way. So
I'm not going to lie, I've not deeped much because I've got one eye on a beer garden, pint in my hand with an England shirt on. But
that's true.
I think, hand on heart, like gut reaction is we need to figure out who's going to be scoring the goals next season, because it seems like, although Twitter have gone down, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get Ugbo back. Which I kind of had that lingering in my head because he's part of the City group, and I guess with how they're acting with Girona and this kind of multi-club ownership, I'm sure he's been strategically placed there for various reasons. But that's by the by. It's not looking like we're going to get Ugbo back, and we can't rely on poor little Bailey Cadamarteri for 20 goals a season. So I think when we figure out who's going to be hitting the potato bag,
I wouldn't give up on Ugbo just yet, because if the money we were going to spend on the American lad, I wouldn't be surprised if we did go for it a bit, because I think the way, if you actually think about what Ugbo did for the team in terms of the kind of player he is, he's not easy to find in terms of people that have got that clinical nature to them, in terms of, and he is just a proper get in the box and I'll score the goals. And I think he's worth the investment because we've already sort of started to build that style around him. But yeah, would you say it's up front, Emma, or do you think there's an area on the pitch we need to focus on a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to argue that up front isn't probably the most important area, but I think the goalkeeping position is kind of another interesting one. I love Cammy Dawson, but it's time for him to crack on and be loved elsewhere. I'll wave him off fondly. But I think, we've got some exciting prospects in the kind of younger age brackets that I hope we do develop, and I hope we treat them well, because I feel like we've dropped the ball there with Dawson and Wildsmith. And I can't remember who's the slightly older keeper that we're linked with at the moment.
Ben Hamer.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think he'll be a Stockdale situation when he comes in. And a lot of fans sort of went into meltdown about that. And I was like, he's a good keeper and he'll just do the Stockdale job. But yeah, I would throw, and I don't want to do the Will Vox thing to you again. But looks like he's gone, right? In terms of, we're not saying that, by the way, we're just reading between the lines. But with that side of it, we've got no midfielders.
Yeah.
When you put it like that.
We've got Barry Bannon.
That's all right. Yeah. He's got another year in him.
Replacement, though. That's been the key thing for me for years. Like, who is going to replace Bannon?
Well, it's the links we're with at the minute. It's like we've got that Ajaria we're linked with. We're getting linked with every name under the sun, and it seems to be like, because that's the area of the pitch that we actually fundamentally need to go for. Because we've got number 10. Say Pervader comes back and we keep all the Windass, then we've got them that can play as number 10s. But we don't really have any other we don't have a holding midfielder. And it goes on Palmer going in the midfield then. And then it's a case of, what do you do there? By the way, if this is outdated, because obviously this is going out actually a week from now, watch Will Voxel have turned around and signed a contract and things like that. So a lot could happen, and I'll put in little celebrations and smiley faces of it's just smiling with Will Vox's signature. But I think that's the play. I think we've all chosen a different area of the pitch, which actually would suggest we actually need to make quite a few signings.
Yeah, I think we do.
Because if you think about it, the defence isn't great either. Do you ever feel sort of, I guess it's different because you obviously, a lot of, would you say your platform's basically Twitter, and obviously you've got your group and everything, but your public facing is Twitter, which I am I'm terrible when it comes to Twitter. I hate everything about it. So the fact that you're on there, I've just sort of, and you've built something on there is very admirable, but I can't stand it. So you've built the platform on Twitter. Do you ever feel like you can't, because you've got a few relationships, not big relationships, but you know these people more than like an idiot that talks into a microphone like me does sort of thing. You've met the players and stuff like that. So do you feel like that is there a bit of a conflict there in ever saying anything if you've got personal sort of, not close relationships, but more than, most fans would have with these individuals within the club?
Yeah, I think we made a decision quite early on that we wouldn't talk about, well, we just wouldn't be overly negative on social media without, good reason and without kind of a lot of discussion. If we've got something negative to say, it will be in a formal, carefully thought through format. We're not just going to start critiquing performances or anything like that from the main account, because we do have decent relationships with a good number of the players. I'd say, like, even if it's only been kind of fleeting things, a lot of them have expressed their support to us, and that means the absolute world to us. And we wouldn't ever want to compromise those relationships or make anyone feel uncomfortable. And it's just not what we're about. We're here to be positive. We're here to make people feel safe, and that kind of extends to the players as well. Unless things need to be said, in which case we'll say them in a professional and as kind as possible way.
Yeah, because that's a difficult line. I can imagine that is a difficult line, because, like, for example, I'm hosting this, I'll host things, I'd happily speak to the players, I'd happily be impartial with that, but I also give my opinion. I feel like we're probably less critical than some others about the club, because we try and always sort of show both sides, even if we're kind of just doing that just for clarity and balance. But with actually, because for example, I think, like, you've occasionally done like match day updates and things like that, and on Twitter and things like that, but you seem to not do that as much, sort of thing. Are you sort of mainly, which is probably the good focus of a supporters group and what a supporters group is, focusing on what you do inside your community rather than making it more of a brand, I guess? Because that's the thing that I guess I was getting at earlier. You're not making it a brand. You're keeping it core to its values, even as it grows.
Yeah, we're a community above all else. I think when we first launched, I tried to do like a match commentary and ended up just getting loads of abuse. And I was like, do you know what?
Oh, I didn't know that.
It doesn't come naturally to me. It's not worth it. Let's focus on what we actually, that there's no need trying to be something we're not. So yeah, we'll just focus on what we're doing, trying to, we're a news channel for our members, really. We'll boost certain things that need boosting. We'll share important things that are going on in and around the club and in football more generally. But we see ourselves and the social media channels as kind of part of the service to our members. So yeah, they're our focus. We don't need to kind of impress beyond that, really. We're lucky to have lots of nice graphic design, but that's just a bonus, really. It's not anything that we've tried really hard to cultivate.
Having said that, though, I think everybody in your group and yourselves have equally got a right as anybody else. So that's the thing of, like, it's difficult when you have responsibility, and I think it's professional, in a way of actually having that line of, no, we can't do that sort of thing. But speaking to you for the time we've spoken here, jump on the normal pod at some point, that sort of thing. We'd love, because I'll tell you what would be great if yourselves or any of your members, and I've talked to my partner about this multiple times, I can't get my female percentage of audience up on YouTube, right? Actually, I lie. It used to be 0.1% when I started YouTube. It's now 8% female. So I'm doing better, but clearly there's something that I'm missing there. But I don't know. I genuinely, would you say that's still because, obviously, would you say it's potentially because, and I wouldn't want you to speak for a collective here, obviously, but women feeling comfortable in airing their voice in these sort of spaces has become more of a relatively new thing, which is why you guys are doing what you're doing, that sort of thing. So the platforms that already exist are obviously going to be imbalanced in terms of the genders, because there's not been as much of a history to it. There's not that saying that women didn't get involved. That's not what I'm saying. And what I'm in terms of, like, actually actively sort of being able to say their opinion without getting abuse, as you were sort of getting at earlier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a podcast with, I'm sure they won't mind us saying, the Wednesday week around International Women's Day. And they've, as far as I'm aware, kind of the only Wednesday podcast that have, like, regular women contributors. And we were joking with them, like, every thing they put out will have some kind of comment about them as women that has nothing to do with the fact that women. Holly is one of our members, and she's on that podcast. She always says, I want the right to be able to talk as much rubbish as men talk on podcasts. That's all I want. And that's true equality. And you know what? Yeah, like, give me insults, but don't make them based on my gender. That's all we want.
No, that's exactly it. That's what you want. It's like, we've had it on this podcast. I try to build a community really slowly, because I don't know if you know this, Bethany, or example, but if you've watched the podcast in the past, you know that Jake's obviously got a disability. We've got that sort of thing. People will be nasty in those sort of ways for it. So doing the stuff that you can't help, for example, your gender, your disability, things like that. I've never understood that. And I guess it's one of those things. I will openly say, probably when I was a teenager, I used to go, what are we even going on about with? I probably would have been that person that was like, well, we've got equality, because my circles were always, people respected each other. Women were respected in that space. But you get older and you see more, and you actually see a bigger picture, and social media is sort of like a megaphone into that actually, no, there is still issues. There's glaring issues. So even though it's that whole thing, well, I'm not racist, so nobody else can be racist. So, well, I'm not sexist, so nobody else can be sexist. And it's very easy to think there's can I just say that there is good people who have that attitude, but they just haven't seen the bigger picture with it, because they've not experienced it and put themselves in them shoes, and they've got the best intentions, but then you end up with the other side of it, don't you? And you end up, that's what I sort of, when I was a teenager, probably had to step back and look at. So it develops into being a bigger issue. And it, as we were saying earlier, it's horrible to see things coming back around, but that's why you guys are here as well, to give a safe space for people that might be affected by it.
Yeah, and I probably went into it a bit naive as well, really, because my lockdown decision was to start a football Twitter account. Don't know why I did that. But
so was your Twitter break? Because obviously that's how we first spoke with all of that, and I think that's probably how you spoke to a lot of people in the fan base, because everybody was appalled, rightfully. But like, it's one of those things where, was that brand new Twitter? Then you'd literally just jumped into like football and thought, oh, this will be a nice thing to do, and then that happens.
I wasn't even thinking about that, but that I got some absolutely awful abuse probably like 6 months after I first made my account. Hadn't really interacted with anyone, and then as soon as I started, I got that. I had to go to the police about it, like, bad abuse. So it was eye-opening. I've come from this kind of cushy uni bubble where everyone thought like me, and I'd kind of been out of the football sphere for quite a long time. I didn't follow it when I went away to uni, really. And then I've come back into, felt like I'd gone back in time.
That's the thing. That's what university does to you. That's what I did realise, because I had the blinkers on for a couple of years, but I find myself stepping back even further. So as somebody who, God, I get it all the time of like, oh, left, woke, long hair, Jesus, sort of that sort of thing, that sort of hippies. But the thing is, actually, I step back even from things that I would have probably considered, things that are more sort of left leaning or whatever. I don't like categorizing things like that, but whatever they say, I sort of step back now and try and just look at the bigger picture of things, because I think people stick to something and go a bit mental. And what I find a lot is that'll be older people that are like, why are women in my space that's been that way? Because it's never been that. You just don't like the fact that women are getting more of a voice now, which in that space, which I think is ideal, obviously. But it's one of those things where you just end up with a minority of people shouting the loudest, is what I think I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And that can't be easy for anyone. But the reason I really wanted to speak to you today and sort of do this special episode, because I would happily have you back on just for an episode. That's the thing. It's the difficult line now of if you can actually come on and say your opinions and things like that. Or maybe there is certain members, obviously you mentioned there's people that do podcasts like the Wednesday Week and stuff like that in there. So maybe we do something like that down the line. People who don't mind giving their opinions that are potentially not going to damage your pre-existing relationships or things with anyone. But yeah, we did a special, and I said, can the women please get in touch with me that listen to this podcast? Because I know there's 8% of you. So please get in touch. And like Jack did, he came from our community sort of thing, and get people on contributing. So hopefully this has actually got a few more eyes from your with yourselves being on here that I'm going to say that again. We are not a closed podcast. We have 3 regular hosts, but yes, we want more voices from all sorts of different backgrounds because everybody's going to have something different, but a different background, a different introduction to Wednesday. But the thing that we've all got in common is Wednesday, and that should always be the focus. So thank you for coming on today, especially with us rambling. It's quite, we will say for clarity, it's quite later on in the evening. We've done this after work days and things like that, but I appreciate you both coming on. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really interesting to talk about like our structure. I feel like no one's asked us about that before. It was really nice to go through that and be like, yeah, this is how we work. I feel like we've probably not given people that much clarity before. So yeah, that was great.
Well, you've given me an insight on it, and it's one of those things that I really appreciate you coming on and doing that. So is there anything you'd like to sort of, you feel like you've not mentioned that you want to wrap up with? But I'll go around like I always do at the end of the podcast, and I'll start with you, Bethany. Anything to add before we end today?
I would like to add maybe a very quick one on reporting that just kind of came to my mind later on. It's not something you can do in the moment, or you can do it in the moment, but it won't go to the club in the moment. So it's not absolutely optimum, but I go to a lot of non-league games as well as Wednesday, and obviously infrastructure doesn't exist in all these places, and if you go into different grounds every week, if you're home and away, you might not always have your phone, you might not have signal to go on Twitter and such and check our platforms, but the Kick It Out app is fantastic, and you can report wherever you are, whether it's a Sunday League game or a Premier League game, or you're at the World Cup final, and it goes to the right people from the Kick It Out app. So it's a really handy one if you ground hop or don't check your phone very much or won't think to save a number. That's a really quick one to download. And I'd just like to say we're always happy to talk about football. I had a bit of a pet peeve when we first started going on some podcasts, and it felt like sometimes just we were there for a sob story, or it was there for...
I reading between the lines, it's kind of what I kind of wanted to say that I didn't just want you on for. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I very much know how those things go. The one thing that angers me more than anything is when people do flavour of the month stuff, right? Which is also why I didn't reach out to you when you started. Didn't reach out to you when you were like getting really, you had your hype moments and things like that. I think it's important to actually realise that everyone's involved at certain times, and they shouldn't just always want something from someone. And that's why I think with you guys, you've come on this at this point, showing that willing to talk about what you're doing, but also just to chat football, which is the big thing.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's all from me. Thank you for having us.
So have you got anything to add before we wrap up today?
Just to plug Owls in the Park, 29th of June. We've also got an event at the stadium with the community programme on Wednesday, the 19th of June. So depending on when this comes out, if anyone's about, come and have a chat. It's free, refreshments provided. We're just always happy to see people, chat about what we do.
All the relative links for all of that will be in the description on this video and the audio feed. So even if you're listening on Spotify or anything like that, I will make sure all the links are underneath the description. So click on that. I will make sure this podcast actually does go out before that Wednesday event. So actually that will get the details. If I put your Twitter in there as well, it'll be on that. So find all the details in that and get involved. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching this. Hopefully you like... I want to say it's a different style episode purely because there was a half an hour of this with a focus, because I feel like it's important to talk about what you guys were doing, but in general as well, it's just another episode of Talking Wednesday. That's what I wanted it to feel like later on in the episode. So thank you so much for watching. Take care, guys, and we will see you in the next episode of Talking Wednesday.